what happened after 9/11 was, first of all, a coming together, a remarkable period for several months when you had the sense that countries with whom we had formal relations or countries with whom we were still ambivalently related came to the conclusion that they would support United States action and that there was a collective danger in terrorism that had to be confronted and that the U.S. was the front line of defense. At that point, the U.S., instead of evoking the support from as many sources as possible, elected, if not to go it alone, to go with a relatively small number of supporters, especially as 9/11 gave way to the years that followed and the beginning of the Iraq War. So the change that occurs in U.S. foreign policy is the coalescence of support in 2001, the diminution of support later on, and in the Iraq War, a unilateral decision to undertake a war of choice. Remember the distinction between the two world wars, which were not wars of choice, but a war of choice in order to check the very real and frightening tyranny of Saddam Hussein and the alleged reality of weapons of mass destruction. Since then, the support for the U.S. position in both, well, certainly in Iraq, less in Afghanistan, but you have, in one sense, a drawing away from U.S. actions, or more recently British actions, in Afghanistan. So it's, yes, it's a pattern which scholars will be looking at for years, but which is a reflection, I think, of an image of how Article 2 of the Constitution should be implemented. Article 2 is, of course, the article of executive power. And this administration, the 43rd administration, is an effort to achieve for the unitary executive, as it's called, a permanent situation in which the executive branch will dominate. And this great balancing act between the two ends of Pennsylvania Avenue will tilt dramatically in the direction of the White House. This is not a scholar's assessment. It's in the mouth of Dick Cheney. It's in the words of Donald Rumsfeld, and it's in President Bush's speeches. They've changed in recent, well, in 2007 somewhat, but we still see a desire to permanently to expand the powers of the executive so that in any future crisis, it will be the president who is, again to borrow a phrase from President Bush, the decider. So if you have a president who says, I am the decider, what you have is an assertion of the importance of this so-called unitary executive against any attempt by the legislature to whittle away power or potentially to respect public opinion to the extent that you have a grassroots-dominated foreign policy.